Millionaire CEO tired of being fooled by women. Freezes when two kids yell "Dad." Jonathan John Sterling, the big cheese at Sterling Enterprises in Manhattan, thought he had it all figured out. Millions in the bank, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and a life as meticulously planned as a military operation. Women? He'd had his fill, each one sweeter than the last, until they saw the bank account. Now, he saw them coming a mile away. Ice in his veins. That's how he liked it. But then, bam! One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, leaving a board meeting. Same old suits, same old numbers. Two little girls, 5 years old, identical in pink sneakers, barreled towards him. "Daddy!" they screamed, latching onto his legs like tiny, adorable leeches. John froze. Stone. Couldn't breathe. Daddy? He hadn't even seen Sarah Thompson in years. Messy breakup, bad memories. But careful? He'd always been careful. This couldn't be happening. A crowd gathered. Cell phones popped up like mushrooms after a rain. Reporters, vultures in pinstripes, started snapping pictures. John's perfect life? About to explode. He peeled the kids off, his mind a frantic hamster wheel. "There's been a mistake," he choked out, his voice cracking. And then Sarah appeared, smug, way too confident. "No mistake, Jonathan," she purred. "Meet Lily and Daisy. They're your daughters." The news hit the internet like a nuclear bomb. Sterling stock probably tanked 5 points before dinner. A discreet DNA test, arranged faster than you can say corporate espionage, confirmed the unthinkable. 99.99% probability. He was a dad. To twins. He tried calling Sarah, straight to voicemail. Of course. Later, his private investigator, a guy named Knuckles, who looked like he'd wrestled bears, dropped off a file. Sarah's been struggling. Big time. Debts piling up. And then this. A message intercepted from Sarah to some unknown contact. Chilling words. Phase 1 complete. Daddy's home. Now comes the tricky part. What the heck was the tricky part? What was Sarah playing at? Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer um alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários, de qual cidade você está assistindo? Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. What the heck was the tricky part? What was Sarah playing at? John stared at the file Knuckles had dropped off. Struggling? Okay, everyone struggles. But this felt different, like a setup. A really, really expensive setup. He needed fresh air. He grabbed his keys, dodging questions from his assistant, Brenda, who definitely knew more than she was letting on. Central Park. That's where he needed to be. He walked for what felt like hours, the city sounds fading into a dull roar. He sat on a bench, watching the leaves turn brown, the lake shimmer under the late afternoon sun. Beautiful. Just like his life used to be. Then a figure approached. Familiar. Too familiar. "Hey, Johnny," a voice drawled. John's head snapped up. "Michael? What the—" Michael, Mikey the Fixer Moretti, John's old college roommate, and the guy John owed, well, let's just say a lot of money back in the day. Money he thought he'd repaid. "Long time no see," Mikey said, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. He settled onto the bench, way too close for comfort. "Heard you got yourself into a little situation." John's blood ran cold. "What do you want, Michael?" Mikey chuckled. "Always straight to the point. I like that. See, Sarah came to me, said she needed a little help." This just kept getting worse. "What kind of help?" John demanded, his voice low. Mikey leaned in, his breath reeking of cheap cigars. "Let's just say making sure you were receptive to the idea of being a daddy, and making sure those DNA tests came back nice and positive." John's world tilted. He'd been played. By Sarah, yes, but also by Mikey, his supposed friend? "You set me up?" he whispered, the words barely audible. Mikey shrugged. "Business is business, Johnny. Sarah offered a very persuasive deal. Plus," he added, his eyes gleaming, "it's been a while since I collected on that little debt we talked about back in college." Before John could react, Mikey snapped his fingers. Two guys in dark suits materialized out of nowhere. They grabbed John, pinning his arms behind his back. "What the hell is this?" John yelled, struggling against their grip. Mikey smiled, a truly terrifying sight. "The tricky part, Johnny. See, Sarah doesn't just want your money. She wants everything." Then a voice, sharp and clear, cut through the air. "Let him go, Michael." Standing at the edge of the path was Brenda, John's assistant. But she looked different. Gone was the shy, mousy woman he knew. This Brenda was confident, powerful, dangerous, and she was holding a gun, pointed straight at Mikey. "Brenda?" John stammered, utterly confused. "What are you doing?" Brenda didn't take her eyes off Mikey. "Saving your ass, Mr. Sterling. Something you should have done a long time ago." Mikey laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can take me, Brenda? You're just a secretary." Brenda smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. "I'm a lot more than you think, Michael, and I've been waiting a long time for this." She raised the gun slightly. "He's under my protection now." "Brenda?" John stammered, utterly confused. "What are you doing?" Brenda didn't take her eyes off Mikey. "Saving your ass, Mr. Sterling. Something you should have done a long time ago." Mikey laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can take me, Brenda? You're just a secretary." Brenda smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. "I'm a lot more than you think, Michael, and I've been waiting a long time for this." She raised the gun slightly. "He's under my protection now." The two goons hesitated, glancing at Mikey, then back at Brenda. Mikey's face was turning purple. "Back off, you idiots!" he roared. "She won't—" Bang! The shot echoed through Central Park, not from Brenda's gun. Everyone froze. Mikey clutched his chest, his eyes wide with disbelief. He crumpled to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. Blood bloomed on his shirt. Brenda spun around, her gun now aimed at Sarah. Standing behind a tree, a smoking gun in her hand, a look of pure, unadulterated rage on her face. "He was going to double-cross us, John!" Sarah screamed, her voice cracking. "He was going to take everything." John stared, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Sarah. A killer? And Brenda? Protecting him? What was going on? The two goons, completely bewildered, took off running. People screamed, scattering like pigeons. Brenda slowly lowered her gun, her face pale. I didn't see her," she whispered, almost to herself. Then the twins, Lily and Daisy. They were standing right next to Sarah, their faces blank, almost expectant. And then it hit John. The matching pink sneakers, the identical outfits, the way they seemed unfazed by the violence. They weren't just twins. They were clones. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. The way she held herself, the coldness in her eyes. It wasn't just about money. It was about something else, something twisted. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely a whisper. What did you do?" Sarah just smiled, a chilling, inhuman smile. "Project Genesis, Jonathan. Ever heard of it? You funded it, remember? All those charitable donations to Thompson Research? You paid for this, Johnny. You paid for them." She gestured to the twins, who were now staring at John with an unnerving intensity. "They're perfect, aren't they? Genetically engineered, superior, and they're loyal. Unlike you." Brenda took a step towards Sarah, her gun raised again. "You're insane." "Am I?" Sarah laughed. "Or am I just ahead of the curve? The future is here, Brenda, and it's wearing pink sneakers." Suddenly, Lily and Daisy moved. They were fast, incredibly fast. They lunged at Brenda, tiny fists flying. Brenda, caught off guard, stumbled backward. The gun clattered to the ground. "No!" John yelled, trying to reach her. But he was too late. The twins were on her, a whirlwind of pink and fury. He heard a sickening crack. Brenda went limp. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes burning with a fanatic gleam. "Now, Jonathan," she purred, "let's talk about your role in the next phase of Project Genesis." Then, from behind Sarah, a calm voice broke the tense silence. "I think that's enough, Sarah." Standing there, emerging from behind a nearby oak, was John's father, John Sterling Sr. He casually leveled a sophisticated-looking silenced pistol. "You shouldn't go messing with things you don't understand, dear," the elder Sterling said with a sinister smile. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" John asked, completely lost. "I'm afraid there's a great deal I haven't told you, son." "Some things are better left unsaid," John replied, before his gaze turned back to Sarah. "Now, I'm afraid you've become unnecessary," he said coolly, before raising the silenced pistol. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" John asked, completely lost. "I'm afraid there's a great deal I haven't told you, son. Some things are better left unsaid," John replied, before his gaze turned back to Sarah. "Now, I'm afraid you've become unnecessary," he said coolly, before raising the silenced pistol. Bang! Sarah dropped like a stone. The twins didn't even flinch. They just stared at John Sr. with those creepy, blank eyes. "Dad, what did you do?" John was losing it. People were dead, clones were involved, and now his own father was popping people off in Central Park. John Sr. sighed, like he was dealing with a particularly dim-witted puppy. "Cleanup crew's on the way. We don't have much time." "Cleanup crew? Time for what? You just murdered 2 people." John yelled. His dad just shook his head. Jonathan, Jonathan, you still don't understand, do you? This whole mess? It's bigger than you can imagine. He grabbed John's arm, pulling him towards the edge of the park. We need to go, now. As they hurried away, John couldn't shake the image of the twins, standing there, motionless, like two porcelain dolls left on a shelf. They reached the street, where a black SUV idled at the curb. Get in, John Sr. ordered. John hesitated. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, his dad said, his voice grim. Somewhere. They can't find us. They sped away, the city blurring past. John's mind raced. Who were they? What was Project Genesis really about? And why was his father acting like he was some kind of secret agent? Then his dad spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. Jonathan, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. John braced himself. He had a feeling whatever was coming next was going to be a doozy. Sarah, his dad said, she wasn't working alone. She was working for. He paused, taking a deep breath. Your mother. John's breath caught in his throat. My mother? But she's dead. She died when I was a kid. John Sr. shook his head. That's what you were told, but it wasn't true. She's alive, Jonathan, and she's been pulling the strings this whole time. John stared at his father, speechless. His mother? Alive? And behind all this madness? It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. But why? He finally managed to stammer. Why would she do this? His dad looked at him, his eyes filled with a deep, profound sadness. Because, Jonathan, she doesn't believe I was worthy. I didn't have the vision to see the opportunity Project Genesis presented. She needs an heir worthy to take on the mantle of what Genesis can truly accomplish. Before John could process any of that, the SUV lurched violently. Tires screeched. They were being followed. Hold on, John Sr. yelled, grabbing the steering wheel and swerving wildly through traffic. John gripped the dashboard, his heart pounding in his chest. This was insane. Absolutely insane. Then he saw it. In the rear-view mirror, another black SUV gaining on them fast. And in the passenger seat, a figure he recognized instantly. Lily, or Daisy, one of the twins. But she looked different now. Older, taller, and her eyes, they were burning with an unholy light. She raised her hand, and John saw it. Not a gun, but something different, something technological. A wave of energy pulsed from her hand, washing over their SUV. And then, everything went black. John woke up disoriented, his head throbbing. He was lying on a cold, metal table. The air was sterile, clinical. He tried to sit up, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. He looked around. He was in some kind of lab. Tubes and wires snaked across the ceiling. Machines beeped and whirred. And then he saw her, standing in the corner, watching him, his mother. But it wasn't the gentle, loving mother he remembered from his childhood. This woman was cold, calculating. Her eyes were hard, devoid of emotion. "Welcome back, Jonathan," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "I trust you're feeling rejuvenated." He stared at her, his mind reeling. "Mom, what's going on?" Where am I? She smiled, a chilling, inhuman smile. You're home, Jonathan, where you belong. You're finally ready to understand the truth. Then she stepped aside, and John saw it, reflected in the glass of a nearby incubator, his own face, but younger, perfect, untouched by the chaos and betrayal of the last few weeks. He looked back at his mother, his eyes wide with horror. What? What is that? She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with a mad, fanatical light. That, Jonathan, is you, perfected, Genesis 2.0. And then he understood. The twins, the cloning, the Project Genesis. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about power. It was about immortality. And she was going to replace him with a perfect, genetically engineered version of himself. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. He was trapped, helpless. His mother stepped closer, her hand outstretched. "Don't worry, Jonathan," she whispered, her voice a venomous caress. "This won't hurt much." Then the lights went out, but this time it wasn't because of some energy weapon. This time it was different. This time the entire building shook. Alarms blared, and a voice, booming and distorted, echoed through the lab. "This is the U.S. military. We know what you're doing in there. Surrender immediately, or we will be forced to use lethal force." His mother's face contorted in a rage. "No," she screamed. "They can't stop us. Genesis will prevail." Then, the door to the lab exploded inward, and standing there, silhouetted against the flashing lights, was a figure John never expected to see again. Brenda, alive, and holding a very big gun. But it wasn't just Brenda. Behind her were dozens of soldiers, armed to the teeth. Brenda looked at John, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and anger. "Sorry I took so long, Mr. Sterling," she said, a grim smile spreading across her face. "But I had to convince a few people that the world was about to end." Then she turned her attention back to John's mother, her voice hard and cold. "It's over, Dr. Sterling. You're under arrest." John watched in disbelief as his mother was dragged away, screaming and cursing. He was alive. He was safe. But as he looked around the lab, at the tubes and wires and the perfect clone of himself, he knew that his life would never be the same. And then he saw it. A file folder on the floor, labeled Project Chimera. He picked it up, his hands trembling. Inside were pictures, horrifying pictures, experiments, genetic splicing, and then a name. His name, but not his name. His father's name, John Sterling Sr. And then he understood. His father wasn't just a businessman. He wasn't just a secret agent. He was something else. Something monstrous. He had to know. He had to find out the truth. He looked at Brenda, who was busy coordinating the soldiers. "Brenda," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I need to know, what is Project Chimera?" Brenda hesitated, her face grim. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "some things are better left unsaid." "Tell me," John demanded. "I have a right to know." Brenda sighed. "All right," she said, "but you're not going to like it." She took a deep breath and looked John directly in the eye. "Project Chimera," she said, "is your father's attempt to create the ultimate weapon." "What kind of weapon?" John asked, his voice trembling. Brenda hesitated. "A weapon," she said, "that can destroy the world." John stared at her, his mind reeling. His father? A madman? Trying to destroy the world? It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. But deep down, he knew it was. He looked at Brenda, his eyes filled with despair. "What am I going to do?" he asked. Brenda looked at him, her face grim. "I don't know, Mr. Sterling," she said, "but I do know one thing." "What?" John asked. Brenda looked him dead in the eye. "You're the only one who can stop him." Brenda hesitated, her face grim. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "some things are better left unsaid." "Tell me," John demanded. "I have a right to know," Brenda sighed. "All right," she said, "but you're not going to like it." She took a deep breath and looked John directly in the eye. "Project Chimera," she said, "is your father's attempt to create the ultimate weapon." "What kind of weapon?" John asked, his voice trembling. Brenda hesitated. "A weapon," she said, "that can destroy the world." John stared at her, his mind reeling. His father? A madman? Trying to destroy the world? It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. But deep down, he knew it was. He looked at Brenda, his eyes filled with despair. "What am I going to do?" he asked. Brenda looked at him, her face grim. "I don't know, Mr. Sterling," she said, "but I do know one thing." "What?" John asked. Brenda looked him dead in the eye. "You're the only one who can stop him." And that's when everything went sideways. The alarms stopped. The soldiers froze. Even Brenda seemed different. Her eyes glazed over, like she was in a trance. Then she walked in. Not his mother, not Sarah. A woman John had never seen before. Elegant, deadly, and radiating power. She wore a simple gray suit, but it fit her like armor. "Brenda," the woman said, her voice like silk, "bring him to me." Brenda, still glazed over, nodded. She grabbed John's arm. He tried to pull away, but she was too strong. Way too strong. "What's going on? Who is she?" John sputtered, fear tightening his chest. The woman smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "Patience, Jonathan. All will be revealed." She led him out of the lab, past the frozen soldiers, to a waiting helicopter. The woman shoved him inside. Brenda followed. The chopper lifted off, leaving the chaos behind. "Where are you taking me?" John demanded, his voice shaking. The woman ignored him. She looked out the window, at the city shrinking below. "You've been a pawn in a very complicated game, Jonathan," she said finally, not turning around. "A game that has been going on for centuries." Centuries? What was she talking about? "Who are you?" he asked again, louder this time. She finally turned. Her eyes were the same color as his mother's, but they held a different kind of darkness. A darker, deeper kind. "My name," she said, "is Elizabeth Sterling, and I am your grandmother." Grandmother? His grandmother died years ago. His other grandmother, the one his dad always talked about with reverence. "That's impossible," John choked out. You're supposed to be dead." Elizabeth Sterling chuckled, a chilling sound. "Death is just a temporary inconvenience, Jonathan. especially when you have the resources and the knowledge to overcome it. She leaned closer, her eyes boring into his. Your father, bless his misguided soul, thought he was creating a weapon to destroy the world. He was wrong. He was creating a tool to control it. John stared at her, speechless. Control the world? His father? His grandmother? Project Chimera isn't about destruction, Jonathan. It's about ascension. About evolving humanity into something more. And then it hit him. The clones. The genetic engineering. It wasn't about immortality. It was about perfecting the human race in their image. You're insane, he whispered. Elizabeth Sterling smiled, a truly terrifying sight. Perhaps, but I am also right. The world is broken, Jonathan. It needs to be remade, and we are the ones to do it. She took his face in her hands, her grip surprisingly strong. You, Jonathan, are the key. You have the Sterling blood, the potential for greatness. You just need guidance. Then she did something that made his blood run cold. She leaned in and kissed him on the lips. It wasn't a loving kiss. It was a power grab, a declaration of ownership. John recoiled, disgusted. Get away from me. Elizabeth Sterling just laughed. Soon, Jonathan, soon you will understand. You will embrace your destiny. You will become something more. The helicopter banked sharply. John looked out the window. They were approaching an island. A small, isolated island, surrounded by churning water. And on that island, a massive, gleaming fortress. Welcome home, Jonathan, Sterling said, her voice a low purr. Welcome to the future. As the helicopter landed, John knew one thing for sure. His life was over. The John Sterling he knew was gone. And something else was about to begin. He was trapped. And he had a feeling he was walking into something far more horrifying than he could ever imagine. The doors opened. He stepped out. And the moment his foot touched the ground, he heard a voice calling out from the darkness of the fortress. A voice he knew. A voice that should have been impossible. Hello, son. John froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was his father. But how? He saw him in the lab. He was... Then a figure emerged from the shadows. Taller, stronger, and different. But the voice, the eyes... Dad? John whispered, his voice trembling. But you're dead. The figure smiled. A sinister, knowing smile. Oh, Jonathan, he said, you have no idea what dead really means, do you? And that's when John saw it. The other figures, emerging from the shadows behind his father. Dozens of them, all identical. All his father. Clones. His father had cloned himself. An army of John Sterlings, and they were all looking at him, waiting. Then, the real shocker, the one that made John's blood run colder than ice. One of the clones stepped forward and said, in a voice that was both his father's and, somehow, someone else's, "Welcome to Project Chimera, Jonathan. You're about to meet yourself." And then he saw him, standing behind the clones, waiting. Perfect, untouched. A perfect copy of Jonathan Sterling. And that copy was smiling. And that copy was smiling. John's head swam. A perfect copy, smiling. It was too much. Way too much. He felt like he was going to throw up. What is this?" he stammered, his voice barely audible. The father clone, the original, he guessed, stepped forward, putting a hand on the shoulder of the smiling copy. "This, Jonathan, is your future. A future of perfection. A future free from your weaknesses." Elizabeth Sterling, his grandmother, watched it all with a gleam in her eye. "He's ready, John. He's finally ready to embrace his destiny." The smiling copy of John took a step closer. He looked serene, like he knew something John didn't. Something terrifying. "Welcome home, Jonathan," the copy said, his voice a perfect echo of John's own. "We've been waiting for you." John felt a surge of panic. He had to get out of there. He had to escape. But where could he go? He was surrounded. Suddenly, the ground started to shake. Not a tremor, not an earthquake. It was something bigger, something mechanical. Everyone froze. The clones, Elizabeth Sterling, even the smiling copy of John seemed surprised. Then, a deafening roar filled the air. From the sky, a massive shadow descended. It was a machine. But not just any machine. It was Brenda. But not the Brenda he knew. This Brenda was 10 stories tall, a metal behemoth. Her face, or rather a crude approximation of her face, was etched into the front of the machine. And she was armed to the teeth. "What the hell?" John whispered, his eyes wide with disbelief. The giant Brenda machine landed with a thunderous crash, shaking the entire island. A clone scattered, screaming. Elizabeth Sterling stumbled backward, her face a mask of horror. Then, Brenda's voice, amplified 1,000 times, boomed across the island. "Jonathan, get out of there, now!" John didn't hesitate. He ran. He ran as fast as he could, dodging falling debris and screaming clones. He didn't know how Brenda had done it. He didn't know why. All he knew was that she was his only chance. He reached the edge of the fortress. Looking back, the giant Brenda machine was tearing through the clones like they were made of paper. Elizabeth Sterling was nowhere to be seen. Then he saw her, standing on a balcony, overlooking the carnage. His mother, but not the cold, calculating woman he had seen in the lab. This woman, she looked different. She looked broken. She looked at John, her eyes filled with tears. "Jonathan!" she screamed, her voice barely audible above the roar of the machine. "It's not what you think. I tried to stop them. I swear." Then, before John could react, she did something that changed everything. She raised a device, small, metallic, and pointed it at herself. "I'm sorry, Jonathan," she cried. "I'm so sorry." And then she vanished. Not dead, not exploded, just gone. As if she had never existed. John stared in disbelief, his mind reeling. What had just happened? Where did she go? And then he heard it. A voice inside his head. A voice that was both his mother's and someone else's. "Jonathan, The voice whispered, "You have to come with me. There's no time to explain. They're coming. All of them. You're the only one who can stop it. You have to trust me." John looked around, bewildered. Who was talking? Where was she? Then he saw it, a shimmering portal, opening in the air, right in front of him. "Come on, Jonathan," the voice urged, "before it's too late." John hesitated. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know who to trust, but he knew one thing. He couldn't stay here. He took a deep breath and stepped into the portal. And then everything went black. Black. Then a rush of sensations. Cold, wet, the smell of ozone. He was lying on something hard, metallic. He sat up, his head spinning. Where was he? He looked around. A forest, but not like any forest he'd ever seen. The trees were twisted, gnarled, their branches reaching up like skeletal fingers. The ground was covered in a thick, black moss, and the air crackled with energy. He stood up, unsteady on his feet. He had to figure out what was going on. Where was his mother? Where was Brenda? Where was he? Then he heard it, a rustling in the trees. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't alone. He took a step back, scanning the forest. The rustling grew louder, closer. Then they emerged. Figures, tall, gaunt, their skin translucent, their eyes glowing. They were wearing clothes, but not like any clothes he'd ever seen. They were woven from leaves, vines, something organic, something alive. They moved slowly, deliberately, their eyes fixed on him. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He was terrified. Then one of the figures raised its hand, and John saw it, a symbol etched into the palm of its hand, a symbol he knew, a symbol he had seen somewhere. Then it hit him. The symbol, it was on his father's ring, the ring he always wore, the ring that was now gone. Who are you?" John stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The figure didn't answer, just kept staring at him, its eyes glowing. Then another figure stepped forward, and John saw it, the face. He knew that face. He had seen it in the mirror. It was his face, but not his face. It was the face of the clone, the perfect copy of Jonathan Sterling. But this copy, he wasn't smiling. This copy, he looked sad. "Jonathan," the copy said, his voice soft, almost pleading, "you have to listen to me." What is this?" John asked, his mind reeling. "This is the truth, Jonathan," the copy said. "The truth about your family. The truth about everything." He took a step closer, his eyes filled with a desperate urgency. "You have to understand, Jonathan. They're not who you think they are. Your father, your grandmother, they're not trying to save the world. They're trying to destroy it." "Destroy it?" John asked, confused. "But why?" The copy shook his head. "It's a long story, Jonathan. Too long. But the important thing is, you have to stop them. You're the only one who can." "But how?" John asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know anything. I don't even know where I am." The copy reached into his pocket. He pulled out something small, metallic. A ring. John's father's ring. "Take this," the copy said, pressing the ring into John's hand. "It will help you. It will show you the way. John looked at the ring, confused. What was it supposed to do? Just trust me, Jonathan, the copy said. And whatever you do, don't let them get their hands on the key. The key? What key? Before John could ask, a blinding light filled the forest. The trees swayed violently. The ground trembled. Something was coming. Something terrible. The copy grabbed John's arm. "We have to go, now!" He pulled John through the trees, running as fast as they could. The forest was alive with energy, crackling and sparking. Then they reached it. A clearing. And in the middle of the clearing, a portal, just like the one John had stepped through before. "Go, Jonathan," the copy yelled. "Go now, before it's too late." John hesitated. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know who to trust, but he knew he had to get out of there. He took a deep breath and stepped into the portal. And then everything went black. But this time, it wasn't the same black as before. This time, it was different. This time, it was like falling forever. He felt a pressure, a crushing weight. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't see. He couldn't think. Then, suddenly, it stopped. He gasped for air, his lungs burning. He opened his eyes, and he saw it. He was underwater. But not just any water. This water, it was glowing. And all around him, there were figures. Tall, gaunt, their skin translucent, their eyes glowing. The same figures he had seen in the forest. But these figures, they weren't wearing clothes. They were naked, and they were beautiful. They floated around him, their eyes fixed on him. Then one of the figures reached out and touched him, and as it did, John felt a surge of energy, a power he had never felt before. His mind opened, and he saw it. He saw the truth. He saw everything. He saw the past. He saw the present. He saw the future. He saw the key, and he understood. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't an object. It was him. He was the key. And then he saw her, standing in the distance, watching him, his mother. But not the mother he knew. This mother was different. This mother was glowing. She smiled at him, and John knew. He knew who she really was. He knew what she really wanted. He knew everything. And that's when he realized the most terrifying thing of all. His mother wasn't his mother. She was something else. Something far worse. She was the original Elizabeth Sterling, the grandmother. The one they all thought was dead. But she wasn't dead. She was something else entirely. And as he stared at her, she began to transform. Her face contorted, her body twisted, until she was no longer human. She was something monstrous, something ancient, something powerful beyond comprehension. She stretched out her hand. The glowing water swirled around her. "Join me, Jonathan," she said, her voice echoing in his mind. "Become one with me, and together we will remake the world." John opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed, trapped. And then, just as he thought all hope was lost, he heard a voice A familiar voice. Strong. Resolute. Not today, Lizzie. And then, everything went white. And then, everything went white. Somehow, that voice, Brenda's voice, clear as a bell despite the chaos, cut through the white. "Grab my hand, Mr. Sterling, now!" He reached out blindly, his fingers grasping something solid, warm. He was yanked forward, the white dissolving to reveal another reality. A sterile white room, pulsating with soft light. Machines hummed, and figures, the glowing translucent figures from the water, were all around. But they weren't menacing. They were attending to something. And then he saw it. A figure lying on a table, covered in wires, unconscious. His father. But not the clone. The real John Sterling Sr. What's going on?" John stammered, his voice hoarse. Brenda, standing beside him, looked grim. "We jumped realities, Mr. Sterling. This is where it all started." "What are you talking about?" Brenda pointed to the machines hooked up to his father. "Project Chimera wasn't just about creating weapons, Mr. Sterling. It was about extending life, about cheating death." "But my father, he was leading the clones. He wanted to destroy the world." Brenda shook her head. "That was Elizabeth, Mr. Sterling. She was the puppet master. She controlled them all. Your father, he was just trying to protect you." John stared at his father's unconscious form. Protect him? After everything? Then one of the glowing figures approached. It held out a hand. In its palm, a device, small, metallic. The same device his mother, no, Elizabeth, had used on herself. "What is that?" John asked, fear creeping into his voice. Brenda took a deep breath. "That, Mr. Sterling, is a reality jumper. It allows you to move between dimensions, to escape danger." John looked at the device, then back at his father. "But why didn't he use it to escape from Elizabeth?" Brenda hesitated. "Because he couldn't, Mr. Sterling. He was tethered to this reality. He couldn't leave. But you're different. You're not bound by the same rules." Then the impossible happened. The machine monitoring John Sterling Sr. started beeping erratically, faster and faster. Then silence. The glowing figures froze. One of them turned to Brenda, its eyes filled with grief. "He's gone," Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. "He's dead." John stared at his father's lifeless form. Dead. After everything he had done, after everything he had caused, he was dead. And then the room began to shake. Not like before. This wasn't mechanical. This was something else. Something organic. The walls pulsed. The floor vibrated. The air crackled with energy. "She's coming," Brenda said, her voice tight with fear. "Elizabeth. She knows. We're here." "What do we do?" John asked, his heart pounding in his chest. Brenda grabbed his arm, pulling him towards the device the glowing figure was holding out. "We jump, Mr. Sterling. We get as far away from here as possible." But as she reached for the reality jumper, something slammed into her. She flew backward, crashing into a bank of machines. Wires sparked, glass shattered. John spun around, and there she was. Elizabeth Sterling. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Sarah. The Sarah he knew, the Sarah he had loved, But this Sarah, she wasn't smug. She wasn't confident. She was terrified. "Jonathan," she whispered, her eyes pleading, "please, help me." Elizabeth Sterling smiled, a chilling smile. "You shouldn't have come back, Jonathan. You should have stayed away." She raised her hand, and then the world turned upside down. Sarah lunged forward, throwing herself in front of John. A blast of energy ripped through the room. Sarah screamed, and then she was gone, vaporized, reduced to nothing. John stared in horror, his mind unable to comprehend what he had just witnessed. Then Elizabeth Sterling turned her attention to him. "You can't hide, Jonathan," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You can't escape your destiny." She raised her hand again, but then something unexpected happened. From behind Elizabeth Sterling, a figure emerged. Tall, gaunt, glowing. The original John Sterling, the one who was supposed to be dead. He grabbed Elizabeth Sterling from behind, wrapping his arms around her. "I'm sorry, Lizzie," he said, his voice filled with a deep, profound sadness. "But this has to end." Then he activated the reality jumper, and both of them vanished, leaving John alone in a room full of glowing figures, with a dead Brenda and a pile of ashes that used to be Sarah. He stared at the empty space where Elizabeth and his father had been, his mind numb. What had just happened? What was going on? Then he saw it, a note, lying on the floor near Brenda's body. He picked it up, his hands trembling. It was written in Brenda's handwriting, short, simple, but devastating. "Mr. Sterling," it read, "he's not your father." He's not your father? What did that mean? Who was his father then? He looked around the room, at the glowing figures, at the machines, at the ashes that used to be Sarah. His entire life had been a lie. Everything he thought he knew was wrong. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know what he was. He didn't know who to trust. And then he heard it. A voice inside his head. But it wasn't his mother's voice. It wasn't Brenda's voice. It was a new voice. A voice ancient. A voice powerful. A voice that chilled him to the bone. "Hello, Jonathan," the voice said. "We have so much to discuss." "Hello, Jonathan," the voice said. "We have so much to discuss." My head swam. A new voice? Who the heck was this? Where was it coming from? It was inside my head. That was new, even for this messed up life. Then I saw it, a reflection in the chrome plating of one of the machines. It wasn't me. It wasn't Brenda. It wasn't even any of those freaky glowing guys. It was a kid. A kid? What the heck was a kid doing here? In this reality-jumping, clone-filled crazy town? The kid stepped out of the shadows. 10 years old, maybe? Messy brown hair, big blue eyes, and a look of pure, unadulterated sadness. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out. The kid just stared at me. Then he spoke, and the voice, it wasn't coming from his mouth. It was still inside my head. "You know who I am, Jonathan." "No. No way. It's me, Dad." The world tilted again. "Dad? But that wasn't possible. I didn't have—" Then it hit me. Lily and Daisy, The twins. The genetically engineered, superpowered kids. This had to be one of them. Grown up. Somehow. But you're a kid, I stammered. The kid, my kid, shook his head. Time works differently here, Jonathan. In this reality, I've had time to grow. He looked down at the floor, his face etched with pain. You wouldn't believe what they did to me, Dad. What they made me become. What are you talking about? He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. They wanted a perfect soldier, Dad. A weapon. They took everything from me. My childhood, my humanity. He took a step closer. But I escaped, Dad. I found a way to break free. And now, I'm here to help you. Help me? He nodded. Elizabeth, she's not who you think she is. She's not even human. She's something else. Something ancient. Something evil. I know that, I shouted, frustrated. But what can I do? I'm just me. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out something small, metallic, the reality jumper. You can do this, Dad, he said, pressing the device into my hand. You have the power inside you. You just need to... Eve. Then he looked behind me. His eyes widened in terror. They're coming, Dad. You have to go. Now! I turned around, and there they were. Dozens of them. Clones. But not the John Sterling clones. These. Clones. They were me. Every version of me I had ever seen. The perfect copy. The forest dweller. Even Elizabeth Sterling. They were all converging on me, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. It's time, Jonathan, one of them said, his voice a chilling echo of my own. It's time for you to become one with us. My kid grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the machine. Use the reality jumper, Dad. Get out of here. But as I reached for the device, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked down and saw it, a knife sticking out of my chest. I looked up and saw who had stabbed me. My kid, his face twisted in a grotesque smile. Sorry, Dad, he said, his voice no longer a child's, but there can only be one. And as I fell to the floor, I realized the truth. He wasn't my son. He was just another clone, another pawn in Elizabeth Sterling's twisted game. But why? What did she want? Then the voices in my head started again, louder this time, more insistent. Join us, Jonathan, they whispered. Become one with us, and together we will remake the world. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the darkness. It was over. I was done. Then I heard a sound I never expected to hear again, the sound of Lily and Daisy, giggling, and then a voice, soft, sweet, but utterly terrifying. Don't worry, Daddy, the voice said. We'll take care of you now. Giggling? Lily and Daisy? It couldn't be. Not again. But there it was, that creepy, sing-song voice that cut through everything. Before I can even think, a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back. And then, darkness. But not empty darkness. This was crowded. A swirling mass of faces, voices, memories. My memories? Or someone else's? They crashed around me. A tidal wave of pain, love, betrayal. Then a pinpoint of light, growing, beckoning. I reached for it, desperate for something solid, and suddenly, I was standing on a rooftop, wind whipping my hair, the city sprawling beneath me like a glittering carpet. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The buildings were wrong. The cars were wrong. Even the air felt different. Then, I saw her, standing at the edge of the roof, silhouetted against the twilight sky. Lily? Daisy? No, both of them, holding hands, smiling. "Welcome home, Daddy," they said, their voices echoing in my mind. Home? This wasn't home. This was a nightmare. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out. They just smiled wider. "We want you to be happy, Daddy. We want you to be perfect." Then they pointed, down, at the street below. And I saw it. Me, walking down the sidewalk, laughing, holding hands with a woman. A woman I didn't recognize. A woman who looked happy. "See, Daddy," Lily said. "Perfect." Then Daisy spoke. Her voice, colder, harder. "But there can only be one." And that's when I realized. They weren't showing me a future. They were showing me an ending. Their ending. My ending. Their game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Again. And this time, it was my turn to play. But what the heck was the game? And why did I feel like I was forgetting something? Something important. Okay, listen up, you guys. The story's not over. Not by a long shot. Did you see that ending? Did you feel that ending? This is just the beginning, people. But I need your help to keep it going. You absolutely have to subscribe to the channel right now. Don't wait another second. Just do it. I'm talking to you. Only real fans understand the gravity of this moment. Seriously, smash that like button. You want more? I need to see those. Likes explode. Feed the algorithm. Show them we mean business. Inundate the comments with your theories. What did you think of the ending? Who do you think the real villain is? What's gonna happen next? I want to hear it all. Let me hear what you are thinking. This is not a drill. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need this ending in their lives. Right now. Don't be selfish. Spread the madness. These friends deserve to share the madness you experienced. Only you can ensure the story continues. Do it now. You know you want to. You know you have to. Let's keep this crazy train rolling, but it depends on you doing the actions I asked for. Do it right now.